Hi, it's Doc and Skip from the Morning Blaze with Doc and Skip.
A little redundant there.
Every weekday morning, we bring you the collision of common sense and comedy.
Okay, now what does that even mean?
It means we discuss current topical stories that matter to people in an entertaining way.
Well, I mean, you and I find them entertaining.
Anyway, follow us on Twitter and tell us what you learned throughout the program with the hashtag #WhatILearnedToday.
That's really just an excuse for us to slack off the last segment, as it's written by you, the listener.
Hear the show on demand anytime at theblaze.com/doc.
That's theblaze.com/Doc and Skip.
Oh, so now you want to be a part of this? Now you.
And now, it's time to Stand for Truth with the host of Stand for Truth Radio, Susan Knowles.
And welcome to the program, everyone. I am your host, Susan Knowles. Please check out my website at susanknowles.com and the articles that I write as a contributor to The Blaze. And don't forget to follow Stand for Truth Radio and a segment I also do called Knowles on the News. Just go to Spreaker.com or the Spreaker phone app and type in Stand for Truth Radio. Make sure that you follow the show there and you'll receive all new updates as they happen. Stand for Truth Radio is now on iTunes as well. Look for us there. You'll be able to hear the show and download the podcasts all for free. And finally, you can also find me on my YouTube channel under Susan Knowles and at Susan Knowles on Twitter. I'm everywhere that you are. My guest today is a great guest, Dan Bongino. Dan has written a book called The Fight, a Secret Service agent's inside account of security failings and the political machine. It's a great book, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Now, Dan Bongino served in the Secret Service during the administrations of Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. In 2011, he ran for the Senate against great odds of winning and finished a close second. In 2014, he ran for the U.S. Congress in Maryland as a Republican in a district that was predominantly Democratic. And while being badly underfunded and outspent by his rival, he fell short by just 1 point. He hosts a radio show on WMAL Radio and guest hosts on the Sean Hannity and Mark Levin national radio shows. He also provides commentary for CNN, Fox, MSNBC, NBC, and others. His first book, Life Inside the Bubble, was a New York Times bestseller. So let's welcome to the show Dan Bongino. How are you, Dan?
Very good. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you could be on. Now, I read your book, The Fight, and I'm telling you, a great title, because for me it seems like America is definitely in a fight, and it sounds like, from what I've read in the book, that a lot of what you're talking about is a true uphill battle for America and for the things that you've seen.
One of the things I was trying to get across in the book is the system obviously has been corrupted. That's not a news flash. I mean, we don't need another book to tell people, the D.C. cesspool has got it out for them. But having campaigned for office and doing radio and opinion writing and having written a couple books and getting out there in the activist arena, I've noticed that there's an intentional, I think, on behalf of the establishment, lack of transparency on what goes on the inside, and it doesn't make it out there. I mean, people don't really understand how bad it is. And one of the chapters in the book I exclusively dedicate to explaining to people that, listen, it's not just about the lobbyists. It's not just about, what they call, the cartel. I've heard people say they were right. It's also about what happens within government pandering to lobbyists. And I guess the best way to sum it up is there are two types of people, lobbyists and people who want to be lobbyists. And I explain in the book how it happens and how they sell you out and put you in the back of the line. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it, so I hope it helps.
Yeah, and I know that you ran for the U.S. Congress in Maryland in 2014. And I think that probably gave you a lot of inside information. What was that like for you?
Well, it was an eye-opening experience, I think, having been a candidate for office before and losing in the Senate race. I had some experience, but having been also a Secret Service agent behind the scenes during 3 presidential elections, I thought I had a better sense of what would happen. And that's why in the book I write, listen, I lost. I lost twice. I don't run from that. I lost in the U.S. Senate race, and then I lost in what was an unexpected nail-biter. We were, I think, the last congressional race in the country they called, in a race no one expected us to even be close. And I say, listen, I'm hoping you can learn something from these political losses. I'm not afraid to put the stuff out there. And I try to tell people the things that I think work in the political process based on experience and our review of the political science literature and our experience campaigning, and the things I think are a waste of time. And I tell a couple stories in the book even about left-leaning groups like Code Pink and the tactics they use to influence the political process and punch way above their weight. The idea being that the book would serve as kind of an activist handbook to go out there and change the world and take their government back. And again, the feedback has been tremendous on those chapters. You know, it's easy to complain about where we are right now, but it's not easy to go out and give people a step-by-step guide on how to fix it. That was the purpose of the book.
Well, I know when I was reading it, I thought it was a pretty incredible accomplishment on your part to have gotten as far as you did in 2014. You lost by 1 point, I think. You were underfunded, outspent in every way. I think that's amazing that you got there. And are you thinking? I know when I told people that you were going to be on the show, they said to me, "Ask Dan if he's going to run in Florida. What's he going to do?" So, I don't know if you're ready to make any announcements, but any thoughts down the road?
Well, I have to go through this process every time this comes up, where the world's been very good to me, between Mark Levin and Conservative Review and Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck, who I acknowledge all these people in the book and tell you exactly how they helped me out, because a lot of people think these guys are just they're rich radio guys. It's just not true. I mean, these guys are people who are activists first, and talk radio people say. Believe me, I mean, I'm not name dropping. I have no interest in doing that. I'm telling you this because I want you to, a lot of these people, whether you agree or disagree with their choices for president or their ideology, I'm telling you these people, they really, really care. And, and they're out there, they're changing the world. And I've had the opportunity to kind of grow my message through my podcast and radio hosting. And I don't know here's the best way to sum it up. A Senate candidate in North Carolina who I'm very friendly with is running again, and I think is a great activist for liberty, said to me, Dan, you have to decide if you want to be Sam Adams or if you want to be John Adams. One wrote the letters and one ran. And I don't know where that sweet spot is for me. I feel like we're making a real difference. I mean, our podcast is a top 50 podcast in the world, news and politics, and our website's exploding, the Conservative Review arena. So I don't know. That's the short answer is I really don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, sometimes I think people get in and their hands are more tied than if they're on the outside working and helping other people. I mean, so that's something to really think about. It sounds like that you're really making a difference. I've read your articles as well, and I've listened to one or two of your shows, and I think you are making a huge difference. And I don't know, maybe if you got in, maybe that would stop, because somebody else who's going to be more senior to you is going to perhaps prevent you from doing what you want to do.
Yeah, and you're limited. To the folks listening who've run for office, they know what I mean. You're very limited. There's equal time. There's campaign finance restrictions. There are things you can pay for and things you can't. You have to be very careful in a campaign. I mean, we can't run as constitutional conservatives and then just throw the rules out the window when it suits us. The process doesn't work that way. So we were very careful. I mean, even little things like, I had my first book, Life Inside the Bubble, which did very well. We got to be very careful with that book. We wanted to give some copies away, but you can't just even buy your own book without declaring it a very specific way. And it does, if you're not an inside guy like me, who doesn't have an army of establishment lawyers around, and you have to go hire people, it gets tough. I mean, the 8 hours of the day was probably bogged down with, administrative stuff and phone calls when we were running the campaign. And then you spent the other 5 out there doing grassroots stuff, and that wears you down after a while.
Well, and I also think what might be an issue is that people do, your handlers, tell you what to say, and they give you suggestions, I guess. And it might be that if you don't agree with them, maybe after a while with everything going on, because it sounds like it's pretty chaotic what you're doing and a long day, you may start to believe what they're saying because you don't necessarily have your hands on the pulse of things at that time because you're doing so many other things. Did you ever feel any pressure like that?
Oh, well, the pressure is constant. It's how you respond to it. Yeah, a friend of mine who I trust, who understands politics very well, said, don't ever let the evil in, because once you let the evil in, there's no stop. Once you cut your first deal,
right.
It's over. And I can't emphasize that to your listeners enough, that, there are people out there who will cut a deal at any opportunity, and I don't want deal cutters. I don't care what anybody tells you. The left's version of compromise is far different from what the right means. The right doesn't mean, the good ones at least, the conservatives out there, don't mean compromising principles. We believe you should keep your own money, you should control your own health care and pick where your kids go to school. That's not open for sale to the highest bidder. And I think people need to understand that. And sometimes, the pressure was constant. I remember one specific meeting about an almost, for some people, a little covered patent issue. And I knew where I stood on that issue. And I remember the person trying to push me in the other direction and saying, well, what's the big deal? I mean, no one's going to know if you change your mind on this. And I said, no, I'm going to know. And that's really all that matters. I don't really care what other people know. What matters is you let the evil in. You open the door, and that's it. Then it's over.
Well, and I also know that you're a dad, and I know that it's important, too, for any great parent to sit there to know that your children are going to know, and your children are going to follow you and because they think it's okay. And once you get on that, like you said, that slippery slope, it destroys not only you, but your family and a lot of other people. So we need honest people like you.
Well, it's important. That's important you brought that up, because I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she's a very precocious child. I mean, she's very smart for her age, and she sees what happens. And I just went through a situation not too long ago with kind of fighting it out with a bunch of DC cesspool guys, and it would have been very easy to sell out. And I told my daughter, we don't do that here. That's not how it works, Isabel. And those lessons are valuable, not just for politics, but for life. I mean, we have too many people in our so-called movement who are all too quick to be fascinated by their name and lights. Hollywood's its own thing. If you're getting into politics because you like being patted on the back, and you want to be famous, I got news for you. You're in the wrong line of work. That's not what this is about. It's supposed to be a service-oriented profession, and it's become, what's been said in the past. I even quote this in the book, Hollywood for ugly people. I mean, I forget who said it. I think in the book it's one of those quotes that's just been hanging around. But that's kind of what it's become, and it's really sad.
What made you get into politics in the first place?
Well, listen, action changes the world, right? I mean, we had a Valley Forge generation at one time, and now it seems like we're focused more on the Forge Valley generation. I mean, we had people back then who really understood the need for action to make positive change. Now, I don't mean to make the analogy to in any way insinuate that, violence is it's not. As a matter of fact, I've had fights with people on the radio who seem to think so. That's not the answer. It just, we're not even nowhere remotely close to that. But action matters, and I was throwing a lot of, Nerf footballs at the television under the Obama years, despite the fact that I worked for him. You know how it is, and you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, and I was restricted by the Hatch Act, which forbids political activities by Secret Service agents and other employees. I mean, for obvious reasons. It's not that
right.
That's a good idea to do that. But I just couldn't take it anymore. I said to friends of mine, it's time, to do something. And it's really as simple as that. If you really believe action changes the world, then you have to ask yourself and look in the mirror and say, well, what actions am I taking? And if it's limited to, well, I post a few things on Facebook, I'm sorry, folks, that's not enough. I mean, that's not going to do much. You have to go out and volunteer for a campaign. If you don't like the candidates, volunteer for a group. If you don't like the group, start your own group. You don't like to start your own group, then go volunteer in another county and find a group. I don't care, but you have to actually do something. The do matters. The talk is cheap.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think we're going to see out of Iowa? What are your thoughts about Iowa?
Yeah, Iowa's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens in Iowa, because right now there are a couple of campaigns that are having run for office. I can tell you right now, unfortunately, money really dominates this entire process, because there are people who are not true believers. And now, granted, the overwhelming majority of grassroots people are involved in campaigns because this is what they believe in. They believe the action matters. But there are a number of people who this is their livelihood. I mean, this is what I'm not knocking. I'm just telling you a fact. They make money off campaigns. They do mailing lists. They do search engine optimization. They design websites. And they're not even remotely interested in, in hearing your stories. You have to pay people. You have to pay for office space. And after Iowa tonight, I think Cruz has a great shot. I think, Trump has obviously got a great shot. He's been ahead. But I think 4 or 5 campaigns, that's probably about it, will make it out of Iowa and New Hampshire. I think you're going to see, the lesser-known candidates like Gilmore, they'll probably say, listen, we get it, but it's time to move on. And also people who are polling at the bottom who are just, at this point, there's not enough lanes left. They're splitting up lanes. And there is something to that. I hear people try to diminish the idea of a libertarian lane, an establishment lane, a conservative lane, an acceptable conservative lane, whatever that means. But having run, they are right. There are lanes. And the problem is a lot of these lanes right now are clogged up with people who just don't have a chance to win. And I'm all for big primaries with a lot of entrants. Believe me, I think it's great. But after a while, you have to have the three, the 3 big things any campaign has to center on: money, media, and volunteers. If you don't have those 3 things, it's over. You're not running a campaign. It's a quixotic effort,
Yeah, and we need to narrow it down. The Democrats, they have 2, not great candidates, but they have 2. And we really need to just narrow it down so people can start focusing more on the real issues, the real, who the candidates really are, and move forward from that. I think it gets to be too much when you have, 9 people or, a kiddie table and an adult table, for the debates. It's too much. And it confuses people, and they get bored after a while watching all of those people and people they know that aren't going to be, that really don't have a chance. And so they just sort of tune out, I think, and that's a dangerous type of thing. We need everybody in, we need everybody listening and voting and that type of thing. Now you've been very vocal about Bernie Sanders. Tell me a little bit more. I've read some of your articles, a little bit more why you've been so vocal about Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe not in your audience, but or amongst the general population of Americans, I don't know how many people understand how dangerous what's happening with Bernie Sanders is right now. We basically lost the country and the culture. And when I say the culture, I know the left tunes out because they think you're talking about, babies, marriage, and guns, but that's not just it. I'm talking about a culture of hard work. I'm talking about a culture of respecting individual dignity and the ability to rise in people's. We've lost the culture because a generation of people in the 60s were indoctrinated into a group of not just bad ideas but dangerous ideas. Sanders is repeating the same thing over again. I don't know, again, maybe your listeners get it. They're probably a different breed, but I talk to some people even in the Republican movement. They're like, he's just a fringe guy. Is he really? Look at some of the 60s figures that indoctrinated these activists that turned out to be the Nancy Pelosi's and Barack Obamas of today. They were considered fringe activists too. And I think the problem we made in the 60s is we did not confront these ideas with enough force. It's unquestionable. There were, I'm not Paul Revere, okay? There are people out there who but we just didn't confront it with enough force. We had William F. Buckley and a couple other people out there sounding the alarm, but I don't think it was taken seriously enough. This guy is very serious. He's not just promoting ideas, and I can't emphasize this to your audience in strong enough terms. It's not that he's just promoting ideas that are, quote, bad. These are damaging, dangerous, deadly ideas. I'm not suggesting he should be silenced. I worship free speech. Bernie Sanders should be given a microphone to speak wherever. That's why I had no problem with him speaking at Liberty University. But the way we fight this back is with more speech, a more passionate speech against what he's promoting. And I'll just leave you with this quick analogy here, because this is important. It's not that the ideas he's promoting don't help. Okay, that's bad enough. You take my tax money, you start an anti-poverty program, and the program just doesn't help. Democrats go, it didn't help, but we tried. That's how Democrats get a pass in this all the time. That is not what Bernie Sanders is promoting. What Bernie Sanders is promoting is a series of ideas that So let's say not helping, right? If you fall in front of me and I don't help you up, that's bad enough. But if you fall in front of me and I punch you in the face and break your legs, that's a totally different level of depravity. That's just not helping. That's actively hurting. The ideas he's promoting have been malicious, dangerous, of economic misery, death, destruction, and people don't understand it. They keep going, oh, well, what about Denmark? Well, they clearly don't read the newspaper. Denmark has socialized components of its economy, and those components are failing. It's so bad that in Denmark, the leader, one of the political leaders in Denmark, actually, I tweet this article all the time, has begged Bernie Sanders to stop talking about their country. He's like, stop slandering us with socialism. We are not socialism. We are a market economy that has socialized a component, and those components are failing. So, I mean, Sanders is talking about ideas that are very dangerous, and people on our side need to start talking about this guy and doing it yesterday.
Well, and it's what our millennials have been taught, that socialism is good. They're being taught that in the public schools. And it's scary to me to see how many of them really think that what Bernie Sanders is talking about is a great idea. Of course, that's not all of them, but it's enough of them to be a concern to me. And,
well,
it's the same
concern
distinction
for you, and this is important, because they always bring up, again, the Scandinavian countries. But what they don't do is they don't want to tell you what real socialism is. There's no such thing as democratic socialism. Okay, socialism is, and look this up. If any of your listeners dispute what I'm telling them, just Google it yourself. Don't trust me. I don't care if you trust me or not, because I know what I'm telling you is the truth. It is the, quote, democratic control of the means of production. That's the mild definition. The real definition is the government takeover of private property as the means of production. But think about this. How do you democratically control the means of production? It's an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. If the means of production, which what they mean by that is they mean private property. Let's say you own a farm which produces food. Those are the means of production. There's capital, there's land that go into that farm. To democratically control it means other people vote on what happens with your farm. But that's not your farm then.
Right.
The first question should be, well, I'm Farmer Jones. I own the farm. Do I get a vote? No, you don't get a vote. Everybody else gets a vote. Do you understand what you're calling? They don't understand that. And they constantly go back to these Scandinavian countries, and what they don't understand is that's what's bankrupted these countries. That's not what has led to they are very successful, but their success is due to there's no history of feudalism in a lot of these countries. They had free market economies, a very homogeneous population for a very long time. The kids don't want to do the homework. They just take it as, oh, everybody's happy in Denmark. We should all do that. Everybody's happy if they're all smoking pot, too, but no one suggests we should do that. Well, maybe.
Well, I know they're not supposed to think. They're just supposed to take what they're given and believe it. That's what the public schools like to teach, these days. Don't think about it. Since our government has gotten involved with Common Core, it's like there's no thinking on your own. Just listen to what we have to say and believe it and move on. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people do. I wanted to ask you, too, what your thoughts are on Hillary Clinton with her 22 emails. And, so many of them that are so top secret, they're not even going to turn them over because they can't allow anyone to look at them. And what the State Department, maybe what they've played in that, sitting there saying, well, we didn't know about this, when obviously they did, because this is something that Hillary Clinton had prepared to do, have her email, everything run through her email at home rather than at the State Department. What are your thoughts about, will Hillary ever be indicted, convicted, or just go on to be presidential nominee for the Democrats?
Well, this is the penultimate chapter in my book, and I wanted to leave the reader with that chapter because I thought it was important, my take on what really happened, and I talk about the source that had been feeding me information. And this scandal, and you can read about that portion of it, is far worse than people know. But here's what happens with the Clintons. The Clintons, through Lanny Davis and Jim Carville, they've learned to manipulate words to get people to think. It's called, what they do is they do this thing called gaslighting, where they gaslight people into confusing almost their own memories of the situation. The perfect example is President Clinton. What's the definition of is? I mean, you remember that?
Right.
You know what I'm talking about. They were asking him, of course, about the dangerous liaisons there with his 22-year-old something intern, and he kept saying, well, what's the definition of it? I mean, these are the kind of things that people are baffled by. Now, they're doing this now with the email scandal, where again it's a word game. It's, well, it wasn't exactly marked. Well, and then then you'll say, well, it doesn't matter because you signed the form that said that it didn't matter if the information was marked. And then she'll find another reason. Well, when I signed that, it was under the understanding that, and you wind up sitting there pulling your hair out saying, okay, do I got this wrong? And are the Clintons right? So put all that aside. Here's what you need. Here's the only thing you need to understand, and the only question you need to ask Clinton supporters, because you'll get lost in the rhetoric any other way. There are only two possible scenarios, and only two. The first, you have a woman running for President of the United States who unquestionably received very classified, very dangerous information over an unsecure private email system. So either, number one here, she did not understand what classified information looked like and sent it anyway. Okay, that's number one. Here's number two. She is competent enough to determine what's classified information, which you would have to be an idiot in government, having received classified information quite a bit over a secure government computer. You'd have to be an idiot to not know what it is. Or number two, again, is she did know what it was, the classified information, and she just didn't care and forwarded it on. I would propose to you, it doesn't matter. Either she's too ignorant to be president because she can't recognize classified information and put us in jeopardy, or she's not ignorant and put us in jeopardy because she just doesn't care. Now, when you propose it that way to Clinton supporters, there's no dance. There's no way out of it because there is no third way to look at it. I mean, they'll try to propose a third way, but it's all lies and misdirection. She either doesn't get it or she gets it and doesn't care. That's it.
Well, and having been a practicing attorney, I understand the attorney speak, and every word is important. You know, when you say marked classified, she can say, well, it wasn't marked classified. And so it's something they take you around in this little jungle and, around these turns, and you don't come out with anything. You're just so bogged down in the word game that they're playing. So that's just really important what you just said. And also, in her position, she knew or should have known, and there's no excuse. If you're in a position of, at a top position like she was, and you didn't know what a classified document was, they're going to hold you responsible anyway because you should have known. That's the way I look at it. Hopefully, I've said this before, she always ends up on her feet. The Clintons always do. So I don't know with this DOJ and this administration if anything is really going to happen with her. I really hope it does because that would be justice. But if not, it'll be the typical.
No, I think she's in trouble. I'll tell you why she's in trouble this time. People had, I think, a sympathetic bone who were moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats. Whether we believe it or not, they did. They played up this right-wing conspiracy over the Clinton scandals in the past. And I think people were just like, the economy's doing okay. This guy's got some moral lapses, so what? Who cares? I think some people were willing to accept it. The problem with this scandal is actually twofold. Number one, she has no political skill, even remotely comparable to her husband. And she's not played this thing well at all. I mean, her line to Ed Henry about, did you wipe the server? What do you mean, with a napkin? Was probably one of the dumbest political lines. It came off condescending, ignorant, stupid. I mean, I don't have enough adjectives to describe. Her political skills are terrible. And number two, everybody understands email. Everyone. I mean, my 93-year-old grandmother gets it on email. She totally understands that there are things you don't send on email because of the New York Times test. So I don't think she's going to be able to dance around this one. And, the people I talk to are telling me the case is open and shut. And if she gets off, it's going to be a mutiny in the FBI. I mean, it is going to be really, really bad.
Good to hear. I so hope that happens. One final question. I know that you have to run. Any advice for America on getting America back on its feet?
Yeah, I mean, the last chapter of the book is called, America needs to get big. And what I mean by that is in the Secret Service, we had this motto on protection, which was get big. When the guns, start going off and the bullets start flying, it's a natural human instinct to duck and find cover or concealment. Everybody does. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a cowardly thing to do. It just happens. Well, the Secret Service spends your entire career training you out of that impulse. They train you how to get big. And If you ever need to know what that looks like, you can go watch the video of the Reagan shooting by John Hinckley, and you can watch Agent Tim McCarthy spread out his arms and legs as the gun spot. I mean, he did it. He did it because that's what we train to do. Well, I recommend that we all need to get big now. I mean, we all have to understand, every one of us, if we really believe in the future of this country, that number one, you're going to have to do. And what that do is up to you. I mean, I've given people the 10-10-10 model, where I say by the end of the campaign this year, you should have called 10 of your friends, getting them out to vote. You should have registered 10 more voters, and you should make at least 10 more Facebook posts about who you support in the election. So that's the do portion. The other portion is, you can run or you can volunteer. You're going to have to do something. Action matters. But ideologically speaking, we've got people even on our side of the movement that don't understand that everyone's going to have to take it on the chin a little bit. And it's only going to be short term. I mean, whether it's people who are 55 and younger who are going to have to understand that Social Security can't continue to work the way it works now, whether it's people in a union who are going to have to understand that, freedom and right to work. I mean, everyone's going to have to forfeit a little bit. I forfeited my job. The proof is in the pudding. I don't speak with forked tongue. I gave up my pension, my health care, everything. No one's going to ever question me on what have you done. We nearly went bankrupt trying to fight for this cause. But everyone's going to have to give up something. And I promise you, if you do so, I promise you that the future of the United States is one of nearly boundless prosperity. But it can't be so if everybody's in their corner saying, well, I'm not giving this up. Well, he's not giving it. If I don't give it up, he's not giving it up. And what about him? It just doesn't work that way. We all need to get big. We all need to forfeit a little something. And tomorrow will be much better, I promise you.
Well, and I think it's a matter also of really convincing people that they really do need to get out and vote, because I know a lot of people think that their vote no longer matters, that there's so much fraud, or that it doesn't really matter. It's already been decided, and that type of...
Can I make one final point on that?
Sure.
It's important you just said that. I mean, because there's a chapter in the book. It keeps coming up. But the chapter in the book is called "Your Vote Matters," but not for the reasons you think. And I say to people all the time, your vote does matter, but it doesn't matter for the reasons you think it does. Your vote is not going to change an election. The chances of that happening are almost non-existent. But your vote matters to you. Your vote matters to you because I lay out in the chapter how you have a voter score. I bet your listeners don't know this. Very few people know this. You have a voter score just like a credit score. Every politician of any significance running for office knows your voter score. We all have systems. I have them. Your voter score matters. So if you're a voter who shows up in every primary and every general election, and you're wondering why you get 50,000 robocalls and you find it annoying, don't be annoyed. Consider it a badge of honor because you're what's called a super voter, and your vote matters. Your vote, people understand that your voice makes a difference because you are going to go and you're going to vote even if there's a nuclear explosion going off. You're going to go vote. And your vote is worth more than listen, it's one vote, we get it, but it's worth more because people are going to come to you for your opinion. It makes a difference. So you read the chapter, it'll be a big eye-opener.
Well, I hope everybody does read your book. It's called The Fight, a Secret Service Agent's Inside Account of Security Failings and the Political Machine. It's a great book. It's got a lot of chapters with a ton of information and things that generally we don't know. And I wish we had more time to talk to you about, your life as a Secret Service agent. And I can't even imagine. I tell you, you got my respect when you worked for Obama. I don't know how you did it. So.
Yeah, well, it wasn't easy.
I can only. And tell us where we can, read your articles and hear more about you.
Yeah, I have a podcast called the Renegade Republican, which is at conservativereview.com under my contributor tab. That's where I write as well. So if you go there, you can just click on my name and all my shows and my writing is there. And I'm on Twitter at DBongino and Dan Bongino on Facebook, where I do all my own stunts. So if you want to comment, criticize, I read everything. I appreciate both. As long as there's no foul language, I'm good to go.
Well, Dan Bongino, thank you so much for being on the show. We really do appreciate it, and we'll keep our eye on what you're going to do in the future. If it's political or something else, you're the one to watch.
Great. Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it. Take care now.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. I really do have this immense respect for him. I don't know how that he was able to work for Obama, knowing what he knows. And when you read the book, you'll find out some of the things that he went through as a Secret Service agent some of the things he's heard that he's talked about. And you know, you gotta think with a guy like with his background, his experience, his knowledge, and things that he's done, that it must have just driven him crazy. Like he said, he sat there and throwing Nerf balls at the TV for different things. I can only imagine when you have a president that's always out playing golf or doesn't concern himself with meetings and what's going on in Benghazi or anything else, that's got to drive you crazy. And I don't know how these people do it. I really don't. But thank God that, you know, we have people like Dan Bongino that really stand up for what he believes in. You know, I've watched him on Facebook. I've read his articles. I've listened to him, and I really wanted to have him on the show today because I really respect what he does. I respect him as a person, respect him as a dad and what he believes in, and I think his loyalty to this country. And it was important for me to have you hear that and to understand that about him if you didn't already know that. I'm so glad that he is on conservativereview.com, so glad that he has a voice and his radio show. It is a really great radio show. I'm glad that people like him are leading the way. And as I said before, it's so important what your children think. They do watch you. They may say they hate you or whatever. You know, I think all parents probably have gone through that. But they do watch what you're doing. It's very important to them to have a model, a role model to watch and grow up with. And I think, you know, Dan's children are getting a valuable lesson. Not only did this man, you know, work in government, he knows some of the inside aspects of it. He was in, you know, running for these offices of in Maryland. Twice, I think, that he ran for office. I can't imagine what he learned from those experiences. We talked a little bit about that today. But I've known other people that go to run for office, let's say, in the GOP of whatever the position is. Man, the GOP, unless they like you, they're not even going to talk to you. They're not going to give you a dime. You know, you think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to run for Senate. They're going to help me like they have everybody else. No, not really. If you're an establishment type person, they're going to probably help you. If they feel that you're truly an establishment type person and you're the one that they want, then they're going to help you. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it yourself. And to try to get the recognition, to try to get the contacts, to try to get, like he said, all the staff that you need in order to run a type of campaign like that and actually compete against other people. What an uphill battle. Now, I don't know if he's going to run for office in Florida. Personally, I can't speak for him, and I haven't had his experiences with the other campaigns. I don't think I would do it. I really do. As I mentioned, I think your hands are pretty much tied when you're in running for a government office. That's the way it is now. I don't think it always was, but I think it's definitely getting worse and worse. I mean, look at what's happening. Whether you like Ted Cruz or not important to the discussion right now, but look at what is happening to Ted. Ted went against the establishment. And what are they doing? They're shunning him. They really are. The establishment now is putting all their efforts behind somebody else. First it was Jeb Bush. He was the golden boy. Looks like they moved on to Marco. And did they really? Now they've moved on to Donald Trump. I mean, what are they trying to do? If they're for Trump, does that mean he's really an establishment type guy and they want him? You know, if that holds out to be true, I think for me, whenever they start throwing money behind somebody, that it really concerns me. I don't know if my thoughts about it are always necessarily true, but I think it's something that we need to look at. If they're backing Jeb Bush, I'm thinking to myself, and everybody else is most likely thinking to themselves, wow, Jeb's an establishment guy. Well, if you lived in a cave, maybe you didn't know that, and that would give you the hint that Jeb is an establishment guy. But, you know, we all knew he was without even a dime going towards him. But Marco Rubio, you know, we've seen Marco Rubio change from one side to the other. I liked Marco Rubio in the beginning. I really did. I thought, now this is a candidate a Tea Party guy. He's a fresh face. Maybe he's got something here going that we really should look at. And I watched him for a few years, and then he lost me. The moment he stepped in there with a gang of 8, he lost me. And again, you may say, well, Ted Cruz has this, and the other. But I haven't seen Ted Cruz step in there with the establishment GOP. I don't know about you. The establishment GOP, to me, has let us down. And I mean let us down. Starting a long time ago. Even starting when we were running McCain, of all people. And, nothing about McCain as a veteran and what he went through. I think we have to separate McCain. That's where we get in trouble. And you people in Arizona, I hope you're listening. But that's where we get into trouble. We think of McCain and we think, okay, veteran, and we can't say anything about McCain. No, we can't be like that. You have to separate his duties and responsibilities and what he went through, horrible stuff he went through as a prisoner of war, as a veteran, and then look at what he's doing in office, in politics for this country. I don't like what I'm seeing. And I'm hoping that the people in Arizona are really looking at this time and thinking about, we really need to replace this man. He has been a career politician, and he hasn't given us what we need in Arizona. Now, if you feel differently than that and you think McCain's your guy, vote for him again. But I think you have a real opportunity this time to vote for someone else. And I think any time with these establishment guys, John Boehner, horrible example of being on our side. I don't know what he did that was truly on our side. It was too one-sided. It was too much of the backroom deals with Obama. And then we have Paul Ryan, who is basically John Boehner Jr., okay? I mean, omnibus bill, that's it. Do we need to say any more? And at one point, this man was running as a candidate, VP candidate with Romney. And Romney turned out to be, in my opinion, such a disappointment. The things that he said. It's amazing. So when we have the establishment, the RNC behind these guys, we have to look at them and say, I really need to take a second look at who they're supporting. And I see that so often. Stories come out about candidate after candidate, and nobody really takes the time. And I understand we don't all have the time. I get it. Busy. Everyone is busy. But we have these stories that come out, and we just take them for face value. And that's not always what we should do. And I don't care who's reporting it. One example, there was an article that I have up on the Blaze about Donald Trump. A woman in the UK came out and started talking about Donald Trump and about how, what a womanizer and all this that he is. Well, I started looking at the facts. And I see things going back to 1995 that she's never mentioned. And it's clear when you look at the facts, there's a lot going on, and I hope you go read that article in the Blaze under the contributor section, and you see what I mean. Can't just rely on what somebody else has fed you. You really need to do your own homework, and I've talked about that, I know, so many times. It is important, and I think today, this is one of the times, it's the most important time ever to do your own research. We are absolutely, intentionally, in a lot of cases, not getting the truth about what's going on in a variety of subjects. Truthfully, I'm telling you. And it's very disturbing to me that we're not being told what we need to be told in order to make a good decision about something. And whatever candidate you're for, you need to know the truth. And you need to also be willing that when somebody tries to tell you the truth about them, that you will take a look at the candidate. Again, do your own research. But as I've said over the last couple of days, this election is bringing out a lot of ugly. There are so many people that are just so willing to attack anyone who says anything about a candidate other than their own. And God forbid that you would bring up any information that they might want to look at regarding their candidate. And I have no problems whatsoever if somebody wants to talk to me about their candidate or mine. No problem. You want to show me something, you want to tell me something in a nice way, I am all ears. But this ugliness, these attacks that come out are just horrible. And I tell people, shoving your candidate down somebody else's throat is not a winning strategy for you. You're not going to convince anyone to go to your side by taking that approach. You're going to turn people off, and you're going to send them further to their own candidate. So why do you do that? Why are people so upset about this election? I understand there's a lot riding on it. The country is riding on it. It's absolutely true. But if your candidate is the best candidate, then tell people why your candidate is the best candidate and spend your time doing that. Not in these attacks, these personal attacks. And it's so sad to see because we don't see the Democrats doing that as much as, between Bernie and Hillary. Nobody is sitting there on the left going, well, I think it should be Bernie and not Hillary, and this is why, and you're stupid and I'm not. And we don't see that. We really don't see people doing that. Now, arguably, they have two horrible candidates. I get that. But they're not arguing. They're spending their time getting information out about their candidate. And, you have to, it's working for them. It really is. I mean, you see all of this information coming out about how the voters just love Hillary, how they love Bernie, on and on and on. And they sit there and they're at their rallies. How they could do that, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, they hear something different than I do. I get that. But they're focused on how to get the job done. They're focused on winning. We're focused on just attacking each other and spending our time trying to convince the other person how dumb they are for wanting their own candidate rather than the one that the attacker wants you to have. We've got to stop doing that. I mean, we really do. We have some good candidates, and we need to focus on that. And what I was talking with Dan, I do think it's time that we get it down, narrow it down to about 4 people. And the other ones will just have to wait for another time. But I think after Iowa, and especially after New Hampshire, we need to just have it narrowed down. Let's go forward with 4 people. You pick the 4 people. Most likely it's going to be Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, maybe Marco Rubio, I think definitely will be in there. I don't know who the 4th one's going to be. I know a lot of people hope that it's Rand Paul. And there are a lot of people who love Ben Carson. I mean, they all have good qualities, good qualifications as well to be president. And you may not like them all, and you may hate some of them. But we have to get behind someone. And we really have to start narrowing it down without trying to attack each other so much to get to that point. There are too many important things, too many issues going on in the world right now for us to continue to go down this route. I mean, our world is upside down. If the Planned Parenthood indictment of the videographers didn't tell you that the world is upside down, I'm not sure what would. You have people going out investigating what they legitimately think is a crime and selling baby parts. And you have a grand jury that is convened to look at Planned Parenthood, the one under investigation. And what do they do at the end of it? Now, any other grand jury would have said, we have findings that show we should indict Planned Parenthood, or we have findings to show that we shouldn't indict Planned Parenthood. What happened instead? We have a grand jury that says, we're going to indict the videographers. Excuse me? They weren't even a part of what was going on in the investigation in the grand jury. How all of a sudden did they become the one that was indicted? It makes no sense. And then we have Sergeant Martland, who, this guy, an exemplary background in the military. Sergeant, Green Beret, everybody loves him. Great job, no problems. So he goes to Afghanistan, and there's a commander who allegedly, a little boy, and has beaten up the mother of the little boy to keep her quiet. And he goes in, and I think basically he ended up hitting the guy. I don't know about you, but I think that's commendable. I think I would have done far more than that. I can't even imagine you're sitting there knowing a little boy or little girl is being raped and you do nothing about it. And then the Army tells you, hey, you know what? That's a cultural aspect over there in Afghanistan. You shouldn't have intervened at all. It wasn't your place to do that. So we're getting rid of you. Out you go. This Green Beret with an exemplary record in the Army. You're out. Shame on you for stopping the rape of a little boy. Shame on you. We're going to get rid of you. And why is all that? Well, he's on his second appeal, and news may come down as early, as today. I don't know. All eyes are on Iowa, so I don't know if anybody, will hear about it or not, or what it will be. But I know the ACLJ, again, another organization, if you're looking to give your money to anyone, aclj.org. These people are out defending the Constitution, defending the rights of others that have been violated. I don't know what we would do without Jay Sekulow and the people at ACLJ. Honestly, I don't. They continually fight for what's right. They're watching this case, and they have said, what's behind this, they think, is the fact that the military, under our illustrious president, is downsizing them. And so they're looking for any reason whatsoever to get rid of people. And under this administration, since right is wrong, up is down, that type of thing, let's get rid of the good people. Yeah, let's get rid of the good people. And we'll just keep those that are just mediocre. Or better yet, those people that just do what they say, don't think for themselves. And don't get me wrong, I know in the military it's different. You've got to take orders. You can't be necessarily an individual all the time. I get all of that. I've had people in my family in the military. I've known a lot of military people. I get all of that about the military. I get it. But it doesn't mean you stop being a human being. And under this administration, it seems like people who are good people, good military people, are just banished. Out you go. We don't need you here in the military anymore. You're too much trouble for us. It's a shame what we are seeing and what we have seen. It's a shame also how this administration has done absolutely nothing to help veterans. We get a new director in, a new secretary, and what happens? Nothing. you talk to a lot of veterans, and they're going to tell you nothing has changed. Veterans are still dying. Veterans are still, maybe they don't have wait lists anymore, but it equals out to the same thing. So the military is just tossed aside. Veterans are just tossed aside. This is why it's so important for all of us to continue to vote. You may not believe in the system. You may feel that the system is flawed. I agree with you. It is. But we need to keep doing all that we can. And it's like Dan said to Dan Bongino. You got to get out there and do something. It's not enough just to talk about it, but we have to do something. And if all that you do is go and vote, that's more than a lot of people are going to do. So I would encourage you to get out there and vote. It is the right thing to do. And until a better system comes along, it's your right to get out there and vote. We've given up so many of our rights in the last 8 years. Can't afford to allow more rights to be stripped away from you or to just take them for granted. So get out there and vote. I'm so glad that you were here today for this show. Great, great guest, Dan Bongino. I hope you go out and buy his book.
And please feel free to share this show with everybody that you know. I think it's really important for them to hear what our guest today, Dan Bongino, had to say and what I was saying about getting out there and voting. It really is something that everybody needs to hear and needs to be encouraged on. We often forget that others are where we are in life and that they're going through the same things that we're going through, and oftentimes that's not the case. They have a lot of things that they have to do, and they aren't able just to throw everything down and push everything aside and research or listen to what other people have to say all the time. And I think we're probably able to be more of an influence in people's lives than we really know that we are. And I think if you have friends or people that you work with, maybe you can enlighten them on some of the subjects that we've been talking about and some of the subjects that are coming up in the news that are so important. Be the voice for them. Be the eyes and ears for them if you have to be. But make sure that they understand what's at stake. Make sure they understand that not only is what they're doing important and at stake, but their children's lives are important as well. I think we often forget about the next generation and what we need to leave behind for them. And hopefully we leave a life better than we found it. But right now and where we're going, that is not looking like it's going to be the case. And we're the ones that have the opportunity to try and make a difference. And by you going out and talking to people, you can be that person who makes the difference. And you can be the one, just like talked about today on our show. You're the one then who is actually doing something to cause a difference. And it's really amazing. We always think that we don't have the ability to do something like that, but we all do. It's just a matter of, are we going to do it or not? Do we just take that one step at a time, and you can make so much of a bigger difference than you even thought possible. And I think that we just, especially in this election cycle, we need to remember that, and we need to help others make the right decisions. And again, do it in a compassionate and loving way to try to convince somebody and to teach them about a candidate, not telling them what they have to do, but allowing them to get the information and then making the decision that they feel is right for them. It may not always be the decision that we want, but it's their lives, and they have a right to have an opinion themselves. So until next week, thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you. Take care.
Hi, I'm Susan Knowles. Do you often feel that our world is upside down, where fiction has become fact and America seems to be unrecognizable? Then you'll want to read my fiction, Freedom's Fight, A Call to Remember. Go on a journey with Bethany, who longs for the country she once knew, before the regime took over and changed it beyond recognition. Go with her on her quest to return America to its rightful place. Order Freedom's Fight, A Call to Remember at Amazon.com today.